Welcome back to the Ancestral Findings podcast. We've made it to the 1910 census, and I have to say, this one feels like a bit of a turning point. If you've been following along through each census with me, you've probably noticed how much the country has been changing and how those changes show up in the records. The 1900 census gave us a lot, but the 1910 one steps things up in a way that's easy to miss unless you really sit with it. What's always fascinated me about these records is how they stop being just lists of names when you start reading between the lines. You begin to see the stories. You see families grow, move, lose someone, gain someone. You start noticing how many mothers answered heartbreaking questions about how many children they had and how many were still living, or how people changed jobs or didn't and what that might have meant. These records speak if you know how to listen. So whether you're deep into your family tree or just curious about what these old government forms can reveal, the 1910 census is worth exploring. It holds more than you might expect. Let's take a look at what makes it unique, what new information you'll find, and how it can help you bring your ancestors' stories to life. The 1910 U.S. Census was officially taken on April 15, 1910. The census marked the 13th enumeration of the population and reflected a nation in the midst of dramatic growth and transition. America in 1910 was full of movement, immigrants pouring in, industrial centers expanding, and families shifting from farms to cities. That shifting landscape makes this census especially important when tracing people who may have disappeared from earlier locations or changed their circumstances. One of the key things to understand about this census is how it expanded on the information gathered in 1900. The government didn't overhaul the whole system, but they did refine some questions and add others that give us even more insight. If you're trying to trace people through time, this census offers a crucial middle step between the 1900 and 1920 enumerations. Marital information wasn't just limited to whether someone was married, single, or widowed. Enumerators were instructed to record how many years a person had been married and whether it was their first or second marriage. For genealogists, this can help confirm timelines and uncover earlier, undocumented unions. For women, there was also a question about how many children they had given birth to and how many were still living. The census also asked about nativity, where each person was born along with the birthplace of their parents. This remained consistent with previous censuses, but it becomes particularly useful in the 1910 census as immigrant waves had been swelling since the 1880s. One of the unique questions in 1910 was whether a person was a survivor of the Union or Confederate Army or Navy. This Civil War-related question can be a goldmine, especially for descendants of veterans who don't appear in pension records. Occupational questions were also expanded. The 1910 census asked not only what someone's job was, but also the industry they worked in. It also asked whether the individual was an employer, employee, or self-employed. Language was another new feature. For those born outside the U.S., the census asked what language they spoke and whether they could speak English. This is particularly useful for tracing assimilation or cultural enclaves. The housing questions asked whether homes were owned or rented and whether they were mortgaged. This can sometimes be matched with land records or city directories to build a fuller picture of your ancestors' financial situation. A tip worth sharing: neighbors matter. The 1910 census can be used to reconstruct entire communities. Once you find your ancestor, scan the names on the same page and nearby pages. You might find extended family living nearby, especially married daughters or siblings. It's also good to know about common transcription issues. Names may be recorded phonetically, especially if the family spoke limited English. Spelling variations and incorrect ages are common. Try using wildcards in your search or narrowing down by first name, age range, and birthplace. There were some quirks to the 1910 census. For example, some microfilm copies include red-coded notations added later for classification purposes. These marks might add detail to occupations or dwelling types. Another often overlooked detail: The census was supposed to count every person where they actually lived on April 15th, not where they happened to be when the enumerator came. If someone is missing from one household but found in another, check to see if they were staying with relatives, in a hospital, or boarding elsewhere. For African American researchers, the 1910 census is significant. It continued the fuller enumeration that began after emancipation, giving a more complete view of black families across the country. Combined with earlier censuses and local records, it becomes a crucial puzzle piece. The 1910 census was also the last federal count before World War I. Many men listed would go on to serve in the military within just a few years. Elderly ancestors you find here may not appear in 1920, so this might be the final census glimpse you get of them. All in all, the 1910 census is one of the richest when it comes to practical, day-to-day details. It helps fill in those early 20th century gaps with data that breathes life into the names on your family tree. If you're keeping notes or building timelines, this census offers a solid checkpoint. Look for changes in family structure, like children growing up and moving out, or new babies joining the household. Look for patterns in employment, shifts in housing, or signs of economic ups and downs. And most of all, use it as an invitation to ask more questions. Where did they go next? What happened to them in the next 10 years? Who came into their lives or left it? That's the magic of the 1910 census, a snapshot of a family in motion, caught just long enough for us to see them, ask about them, and maybe even understand them a little better. If you've got a hard-to-find ancestor you're stuck on, I'd love to hear about it. Just head over to ancestralfindings.com and click on Contact to send me a message. While you're there, take advantage of our free weekly genealogy lookups, explore thousands of articles, and enjoy hundreds of podcast episodes. We've been helping family history researchers since 1995. And if you're looking for even more, check out our Genealogy Gold Q&A series over on Patreon. Thanks for listening, and as always, happy searching.